In this video, I'm going to show you how you can go from 2D floor plans to 3D renders, which are scale accurate, how we can generate floor plans with AI, which are editable, how we can import furniture, and how we can change materials all in one video. But everyone who wants to use AI in architecture first must get the basics down in terms of manual drafting or even rendering. So first of all, let's just get the basics down in terms of drafting and drawing inside Synapse. That way it is a lot easier to customize anything that AI outputs to us. So do not skip over this. Don't try to play this smart. I've helped hundreds of people to learn Synapse and implement AI in their architecture workflow. So I know how this works. Just be patient and continue the rest of the video. Do not skip this around until the AI features, the glowy stuff, because if you do not get these basics down, the AI generations is not going to help you, and it's not a magic wand. So first of all, we're going to go at synapse.app, and we should have a web page for like something like this coming up. You can scroll down to see more of the features that this AI platform offers for architects, which I think is the best. But nonetheless, you can just go ahead and try it for absolutely free without a trial. And once you're in, you're going to find something like this in a dashboard. Over here, you can see me in a quick tutorial, which I did about this, but this is a lot more in depth. So at inbox, you can see when someone has invited you to work on their file with them at the same time. So it's fully online collaborative. This AI tool, basically you can click accept, and then you're going to be able to check any of the stuff right here. So for example, we can go ahead and open the floor plan right away. And over here, you can see the file. You can also do a lot of graphic representation tweaking and honestly show floor plans to a very high level in terms of graphic representation. I'm going to go back and we can see how we can start something absolutely from scratch. So over here, you can click a new model and you should see a page, something like this show up. So this is a frame and this would be the canvas. And the way that I would imagine this, or the best way to explain how this works, is that the gray part, the canvas, is a table, and the frame is basically the paper on which you draw and place everything. And you can basically add multiple frames over here. So what we can do is we're going to add, for example, something like this, and we can add multiple frames to draw in multiple papers in that sense. AI is not a magic wand as of now, and that's exactly the reason why I'm going to show you how to use the manual tools first. That way, when AI generates something, we have a lot more skills in order to tweak that to our liking. So first of all, you can see that right here, we can do the selection. Basically, we can select anything on the platform just like this. On this side, we do have the layers bar, the pages bar, where you can add new pages, which is basically new tables in that sense. And then over here, you also have the asset library where you can drag and drop assets, which we're going to do in just a second. This is for backgrounds, for the renders. And over here, we have cutouts, which can help for elevations or any other thing like that for collages and stuff. First of all, right here, we have the frame. We can just click on the frame or use the F key as a shortcut, and we can start with one click and another click to end it. Once we draw another frame, you can see it adds over on this area. And then we can also change the format to any type of size that we want, or we can keep it custom by basically adding the size over here. We can also change the scale of the drawing, which we do not need as of now to overcomplicate things. And we can rotate it to horizontal or vertical just by clicking that. Then we can click, for example, an A3 frame, which is this size, which we can use to draw. We can also then change the background of the frames. For example, we can keep it a bit of a darker gray if you want to. And then also the stroke of the frame, which is something that we do not need to do right now. This is basically how we can modify the frame. We can basically move it around in any way we want. Over here, you can see that we have the prompt bar, which we're going to use later on for all the AI capabilities that Synapse has. So right here, I'm just going to go ahead and type in floor plan, and then we will move on with the rest of the stuff. So this was the frame tool. Now let's go on to the manual drafting tool. So if you click right here, you can see all of the basic tools like rectangle, circle, polyline, line, arc tool, and pen tool, and also the guideline. So let's start with the rectangle. I just want to show you how you can basically just draw any type of shape. This is very useful for like elevations, which you're going to do later. Basically, you click once, you click another time. Over here, you can add a fill. So let's say a white fill. You can also change the stroke. So for example, we can leave a completely white stroke. We can make it thicker, so we can do, for example, 5 points in terms of thickness of the stroke. We can lower the opacity on the fill, so we can do 30%. You can see now this is more transparent. We can leave it at 100% for now. And this is basically how we can stylize a simple rectangle. We can also tweak the size of it just by clicking here, so it can be 12 by 9. And then we can also rotate it just by one click or by giving it a certain angle, so for example 45 degrees, right? Well, this is a basic drafting tool which is helpful for elevations and sections. Then we have the circle tool. You click once in the center and then you basically can type in the radius. For example, you can do a radius of 5 meters, and then we can do a fill. We can basically do the same color. If we want to do the same exact color for the fill, we can use the eyedropper tool right here. We can just click on top of any color which we want to copy, and then you can see now both of these have the same color. Then we can go to stroke. We can leave it at completely white like we did there, and then we can leave the stroke at 4-point thickness just like we did right here. Then we also have the polyline. So basically polyline is a line that continues. So we can do something like this, for example. We can just stop it here. And then we can also add a fill on this polyline as well. We can add the same stroke like this. And if in any case you want dashed lines, we can just click over here. And then we can basically click on dashed lines, and we can add basically how long the dash will be and the space between the dash. This is what these two numbers represent. So in that case, we can do 50 by 100. So it means that the length of the dash will be 50 and the space will be 100. And we have the dash stroke on the polyline that we did earlier. Then we can also do an arc. So basically this would be clicking once in the starting point, another time in the end point, and then we would have an arc, something like this. So we can just click once. For this one, since it's not closed, we cannot add a fill as of now, but we can add a strokes. For example, we can add 4 points in terms of thickness and make it completely white. And then also the pen. This is very useful when we want to experiment some sort of sketching or draw something more irregular. So in that case, I will just duplicate the frame. So I can just click Control D and this will duplicate the frame. We can delete everything inside the frame. And then we can use the pen tool. We can also use the shortcut Shift P. And then we can draw with the pen tool. So for example, we can draw some sort of organic shape. And then we can also just close the shape off. So now, for example, if let's say this would be a building in a hill, whatever, we can just add a fill to this irregular shape as well. So we have a lot of freedom in terms of the capabilities that Synapse has for drawing and also unleashing creativity for all architects. So all of these are pretty basic stuff. We just want to make sure that we know all of the basics. That way we can intervene inside all of the renders and the floor plans that we create with AI through Synapse. Okay, so let me just duplicate this as well, or we can completely just delete this one for now. And now let's get to real drafting. If you go over here, you can see more automated drafting tools in the sense that you can draw a wall instead of needing to draw each line. We have a separator of rooms, we have openings, and then we have the room. So I'm going to show you how each of these work. So in order to do this, I'm going to upload a reference image that I found on Pinterest. So we can use this upload media tool, and then I can just click on it and then it will be uploaded. And by the way, this works for PDFs as well. And now we have to turn this into real scale. So how do we do that? We just know that this should be 2.2 meters. And then I draw a polyline, which is 2.2 meters. So we can say 2.2. As you can see, this is pretty close to scale. We can just increase this in size a little bit. And let's just get it close here. Now it is a bit too big. So let's just make this smaller. And now we can trace over this, and I can show you how we can draw a floor plan and replicate this inside Synapse manually. Now, one cool thing that is coming out very soon, and I will update on episode 2 of this AI Masterclass, is that Synapse will offer AI tracing where you can just upload an image, upload a PDF, and in one click, it will trace everything, and we do not have to trace it manually on top. However, this is very important to just exercise how to use the tools in case we want to modify anything inside of the AI generations that Synapse offers. So if you go over here at wall, we can just click wall, and then basically you can choose the alignment. So if you want to align it to the right, or do you want to align it to the left? In this instance, it will be the left. Do you want dimensions turned on? And then we can also choose the fill. So in this instance, I will make the fill dark gray as well. We can do a stroke, which is going to be completely white. And then I think we can do 2 points for the thickness of the stroke, and we can get started from here. We can also do a right alignment, and then the thickness we can tweak it. So for example, 0.25. We can go all the way over here. We click once, so that is one of the walls done. We can click another time over here. We scroll downwards, and then we can close it off. So now we have all of the exterior walls done just like that by doing 4 clicks. Then we can continue to the interior walls. We can make this thinner, so let's do 0.15. Let's start from over here, and then let's go upwards. Let's close this off. We can select this wall and then continue it all the way to connect it to the other wall. So that would be done as well. And then we can start from over here. We can change the alignment now to right. We can go upwards and then close this off right here. So now we have that done, and now it's just this area with the wardrobe. So let's just rotate the alignment, go over here, let's go upwards and close it this way. Cool. So now we have all of these walls added. What we will do now is that I can go ahead, I can right click, and then I can make this locked. That way we do not accidentally choose it. And then what we will do as well, we can select all the walls. First of all, as you can see, all of these little joints or these lines over here, we can just remove them by going over here and making the line cap to butt. And now these will be removed. And then something else that we can do just to make the opening process a lot easier is we can select all of this. I will lower the opacity of all the walls to 40% for now. That way I can see where there are windows so I can trace them correctly. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and add the opening. So I will go over here at the wall. You can see there is the opening option. We can do Shift O, and then you can see a door popping out. We can just keep the door right here. We can rotate it to the outside, and then we can increase it inside by dragging it in the corner like this. If you want to be even more precise, we can move it right where the door is in the reference image. And then we can go ahead, we can use Shift O. We can just apply a window on this side. And then you can see right now it is a door. However, if you go to type, you can just go to window. In terms of type of opening, we can just move it where it starts, and then we can scale it over on this side to have the same exact size. And then if you want to, you can just use Control D, and then we can just move it where it starts. That way we just duplicated it instead of having to do it from scratch. And now we have the openings done on this side as well. Oh, there's actually one more door over here, so we can do Shift O once again. We can just apply a door over here. We can let it egress outside. We can flip it to the right. And then now we have every single opening that we need fully traced for this floor plan. And then next up, what we can do is that I'm gonna go ahead and apply rooms. So basically what rooms does is that with one click, you can add a surface area with a hash or anything you need. So for example, if we just click here once, this would be room 47 here. However, we can go here at layers, we can choose room 47 and then just move it to the back. That way it doesn't actually interrupt anything that we're doing here. And then we can also rename it. So this can be the bathroom, which is the bathroom. So we can go over here at the layers, we can rename it. We can type in bathroom. We can click outside, and now this is the bathroom. And then we can also change the fill over here. So this is where we can stylize and basically enhance the graphic representation of the drawing. If you click on the fill, you can see that we can use a solid fill. So we basically just change the color uniformly, or we can go to texture, which would be a more real life like texture. So over here you can see all of these textures that we can choose from. We can use some sort of tiles like this, other tiles like that. And basically we can choose over herringbone parquet as well, which is not appropriate for the bathroom. I think the best thing for the bathroom would be to use these tiles. We're gonna get back to that in just a second. We can also add hashes just like the ones you see over here, or add a custom image. I think for this one, we will just use travertine tiles square. We can also change the scale of it, so we can increase the scale. So something like this would be nice. We can also lower the opacity. If we do not want it as visible, we can also rotate it however we want. However, I think we can just leave it at 0 for now. We can also make the opacity to 100%. Then we can do the same thing for this whole area. Right here you can see there are multiple areas. So I think I will divide this as one. So living plus kitchen, this would be the hallway or the corridor. And then this, we can just leave it as bedroom for now, right? So this is a very small studio kind of apartment, even though it's not studio apartments, it's just very small. In that sense, I will go to wall, I will click separator, and then we can choose where we do want to separate the room. So we can click once on that starting point and then another time over here. So now we can separate these two, and then we can do another time, which is basically by going to wall, we can go to separator once again, and then we can separate these over here. So now if we apply a room, it will not go over the separator. So now we can have 3 different rooms that we can tag with the room. So I can click once over here. This would be the living room. We're gonna get back to that in just a second. By the way, if you do want to switch things around, the room tool is so easy because you can just drag over the separators or add it anywhere. So it's super automatic in terms of how it tags the rooms. And by the way, as you can see, it also shows the area size, right? So everything is super useful in drafting, even manually in Synapse. So over here, we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna type in living plus kitchen. Let's move this all the way to the back. And then let's add another room. So this could be the bedroom. This could be the corridor as well. And now we can choose both of these. And then let's just move them right here. Cool, so now room 51 is the bedroom. So we can just rename this as bedroom. And then this, we can just rename it corridor. All right, so now we can just select this. Let's go to texture. I think over here, we can choose this herringbone texture. We can also increase it in size to something like this. Let's just leave it at 17, and then we'll do the same thing for both of these other rooms as well. Let's go over here, let's do 17, and then also corridor as well. Let's go over here, and then let's do 17. So now we have added the zones. What we will do for now is that I will select all 4 zones, and I will just lower the opacity. That way, it is visible where the furniture are, because now we're getting to the phase where we do the asset placement. So let's just leave it at 40%. And now we'll go over here to the asset library, and then we can scroll downwards. So first of all, we can just add this dining room over here. So we can just leave it like this. Then we can scroll downwards. We can add, for example, this sofa. Let's rotate this. This seems a bit out of scale in terms of the library, but it's super easy to just increase this. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 90 degrees in terms of like how it's placed, because it even looks more naturally placed like this as well. And then we can basically go ahead and drag and drop the bed in the bedroom. So it would be this. This is also out of scale, so we can just move this downwards, and let's just increase it in size for something like this. Let's just double click. So if you go double click, then we can edit all of these one by one. By the way, these are all fully editable, and then we can delete this. So I will increase this in size. Now we have the bed as well. Let's go over here. Let's move over to the bathroom. I'm just going to add this toilet. We can add this basin as well. Let's rotate this by 90 degrees just by clicking once. We can also increase this in size. And then also the same thing, we can just rotate this over here, and we can increase it in size. The bathtub, we can also draw it manually if we want to. So for example, we can start over here and end over here. We can make this a softer gray. So we can just draw an opened rectangle over here. And then with the arc tool, I can just click A, and then let's just finish it over here. So this could be our little bathtub. And then the rest of the stuff we can basically draw manually as well. So in this instance, I can just go ahead and add a sink for the kitchen like this one. I'm just gonna leave it there for now. And then we can also add this as a oven. Okay, let's just go ahead and draw a rectangle starting from this side to over here. Then let's just rotate it to something like this. So we can bring this to the front by just clicking with a right click and then bring to front. And then we can put this over here. We can double click on this as well. We can bring this to front, let's rotate it, and it's gonna be something like this. So now we have the oven, the sink, and now we're here. This could be a fridge. I'm just going to draw a big rectangle here because it just doesn't matter for now. Even here for the wardrobe, I'm just gonna go ahead and draw a simple rectangle. I can even use the polyline to draw an X mark, and then I can just click all of these, Control D to duplicate, and then let's just add it over here. Okay, so now let's just use the circle tool with the O shortcut. So this can be our coffee table right here. This is most likely going to be on top of the smaller one. Let's use a rectangle once again for the TV stand, and another rectangle right here for something like this. Okay, cool. So I think now it's time that we do not need the reference image anymore. So I'm gonna go over here at the floor plan, and I'm going to go ahead and unlock this and remove this completely. And then I'm gonna select all of these zones, and let's make these to 100. So now we have divided everything. As the floor plan right now, there are issues that I see. So basically, first of all, the thickness of all of these manually drawn rectangles and lines should be a lot thinner in terms of compared to the walls, because the walls should have the main emphasis in a section plane, and we should have clear hierarchy here. So I'm gonna select all of the drafting that I've done here on the left side. So any rectangle, circle, polyline, anything like that, I'm just going to select them on the side. And what I will do now is that I'm going to keep the stroke on all of these 0.5, and these are going to be a lot thinner and it will be a lot easier on the eye, as you can see right now. Then for the rest of imported blocks, I can just apply the same fill. So I'm going to copy the hex code over here on this manually drawn rectangle. We can go inside the block. Here we can just paste it. We can keep the stroke completely white and 0.5 in terms of thickness. Let's select this as well. Let's go over here and then let's just keep the stroke completely white too, and we can do 0.5 on this too. And I'm going to rinse and repeat this process for all of the imported blocks. So now what I will do is that I will select all of the walls over here, and then I want the walls to be in the front of the layer, so on top of everything else. I'm going to click bring to front, and this is basically how we can draw a simple floor plan in terms of all this stuff. What I like to do, and this is just in terms of graphic representation, I think that the texture is a bit too strong. So what I will do is that I will draw a rectangle on top of the floor plan, something like this. And the rectangle, I will add it completely to the back. So I'm going to click send to back, and I will make this completely white. And then I will delete the stroke completely by clicking here. Let me just select the walls one more time because these still have the lower opacity from before. So let's go to fill 100. Okay, so now after I've added the white background, what I will do is that I will select all of the rooms and I will lower the opacity. That way they are a bit less strong. So I think something around 80 would look fine. So now we have some sort of contrast between the furniture, the rooms, and everything else. So this is basically how we can draw inside Synapse with the manual tools. We can also add a text just by adding text. For example, we can annotate something. So we can say right here, fridge. We can just type this in. I can select this, I can increase it in size. For example, I can make it 14. I can also change the font. So for example, let's just make this Laura. We can also change the stroke, so we can make it completely white, line height, etc., etc. And then we can also add dimensions. So basically we can go over here at text, we can just add dimensions. This would be one dimension. We can add another one, and this is completely chained and continued. Obviously, we can also change the units that we use. By the way, if you use imperial units, inches, or anything like that, you can just click over here. You can click at units. You can use millimeters, centimeters, meters, inches, etc. The precision, obviously zooming to content if you lose something. So if we just go super back like this and you cannot find where you drew anything, you can just click zoom to content, and this will bring us right to where we drew. Okay, so one of the other very cool features inside Synapse is that you can go over here at share and invite anyone to join you in order to edit anything in the same file at the same time. So for example, I can just invite Eris. So I just invite them via the email that they used to sign up to Synapse, which by the way is completely free, and you can do that in the link below. And once the invitation is sent successfully, they can go inside the Synapse dashboard, and right here at inbox is where you can join any team. So as you can see, Eris has joined now. We are working on the same file, and basically I can also add comments. So right here I can add a comment. I can say flip this sofa. I can add a comment, and then Eris can see it in his file. He can open it, and then he can also make modifications or write something inside the comment. So we can see all of these in real time, and you can also modify. So right here you can see that he has replied with done, and he is already flipping the sofa, as you can see right here. So it's fully collaborative, and you can work with multiple people at the same time. Thank you to Eris for joining and helping us demonstrate this. And then I will move on to the AI features now. So first of all, let me show you the floor plan generator. If you just draw a boundary, so with a rectangle tool. So the size of the rectangle can be based on a real life project, and this could be the boundary of your project. Or if you want to just test this out, make sure that the size of rectangle is the actual size of the prompt. So for example, if we say a 2-bedroom apartment, this should be around 90 square meters. For example, we can type in 9 by 8.7, and we can click enter. And then if you see over here, we can just go ahead and switch from image generation to floor plan generation. And then we can type in 2-bedroom apartment. And once we click send, we will see a generation show up in about 3.4 seconds. So this would be the generation. You can see that not everything is in place because this is 0.5 version, but it's very good to just test things out and iterate. And basically we can do even smaller scale buildings with this, so we can do a full unit. Obviously, even once this is generated, you can modify all of these, move these, add walls, add rooms, and this is the exact reasons why I went over here and how we do a floor plan by ourselves. That way, when AI generates something for us, we can intervene a lot easier and modify stuff a lot faster. So let's just test something out. So for example, let's say we have an apartment unit. We can do something which is 8 by 11. Then we can do something which is 12 by 7. We can do something which is 14 by 9. And then we can add one more floor plan, which is smaller for something like this. So we can go over here, we can select this, and we can type in 2-bedroom apartment. Now keep in mind, all of the elements should be inside the frame here, and this should be turned on to floor plan generator right here. So the switch should be on the floor plan generation. And then we can click send, and we should wait in a few seconds, and then it generated a floor plan there. Over here, we can go ahead and type in another 2-bedroom apartment. This is gonna get a lot better very fast, and in a few months, you're gonna be able to fully get a very high quality full apartment unit layout in a few seconds, just like I'm doing right now. We can type in 3-bedroom apartment, we can click send, and then we can click over here, we can type in 1-bedroom apartment as well. We can click send, and if we get close to this, you're gonna see that yes, there are some windows that are flipped randomly that we just have to put in place. So basically like this. And there can always be modifications that we can do. So for example, we can just delete this completely. If we want to, we can continue this wall all the way over here and then delete this one completely. We can add this door, for example, over on this side. We can delete this one completely. We can kind of give more space to this other room if you want to make this bigger. We can take this off, we can take this off. If we just move this, it will actually be placed inside the wall. So it is fully editable, and it is the only one that does it at this level as of now, with full customizability. This is basically how the floor plan generator works and how fast it can do something. Now, where this gets very crazy is that Synapse also has 2D floor plan to 3D rendering in 9.8 seconds, which is fully real scale. So what we can do here is that if we go to the floor plan that we just drew earlier, we can just go over to camera, make sure the camera is inside the actual frame. We can click once for the starting point. We can click another time for the end point. So for example, it can be over here. And then once we have the camera selected, we can change the focal length. So for example, we can make it wider to 24. We can make it a lot wider to 14 if you wanted to. And then we have to switch here to image generation. We have to have the camera selected as well. And then if you go here at live preview on, you will see that the length of the wall is exact as in the floor plan, the window placement and everything else. And obviously this depends very much on the field of view as well that we have placed here. However, if we keep the camera selected and then we can type in something like living room and a luxurious, this is not even luxurious, but luxurious Berlin apartment. By the way, pro tip, if you actually specify a certain city, certain area, or anything in terms of location, the output is a lot better in exteriors and also interiors. So living in a room in a luxurious Berlin apartment, we can say, for example, windows to be full height, floor to ceiling 3 meters, cozy lighting inside, overcast setting outside. And we can click here, we can click send. So then we have something like this which is generated, which is actually real scale if you look at it, the distance and everything. Now we can also make modifications to all of this. For example, we can say make all walls olive green, and then we can click on this so we can continue to iterate, and we can say make all walls navy blue. So this is the cool stuff. We do not just get an output and stuck with it. We can go ahead and iterate and test a bunch of things out. So we can see all the walls are olive green now, and then we can see this as well. Let's see how this turns out. And these walls are navy blue. You can see this wall is not selected, but obviously some of the times it's not going to be perfect. Once again, this is not a magic wand. Let me show you what else we can do. So for example, we can have this image, and then we can go over here, we can say leather sofa, no background. So we can download anything from Google. So for example, we can select, I don't know, this one. We can just right click. I'm just going to download this image, and then I can go right here. I can just drag and drop it into the prompt bar. I have to have this frame selected, by the way, in order to replace it. We can say replace the sofa with this leather sofa. and we're just gonna try this randomly. Let's see how the results will be. So you can see how it immediately replaced the sofa with a new one. It might not have done that perfectly here with the pillow as well, but we can also test it out with replacing materials too. So we can just type in wallpaper texture. I'll just choose any random one. So for example, we can just choose this one. We can save the image, and then we just go here at Synapse. We keep the frame selected. Let's replace this with the wallpaper. We can say replace all wall materials with this wallpaper. We can click send, and let's see how this does. And as you can see, it basically did that for us over here as well. And honestly, this is very impressive on how fast this can be done. Imagine doing all of this with 3ds Max. I mean, even real-time engines cannot get up to this speed. And I also want to show you how useful it is for exteriors as well. So for example, if you've already drawn something like this for an elevation, so this is a cabin, I can go ahead and just make the frame this big. I can keep the frame selected, and I can type in render this as a cabin in Switzerland mountains with natural raw materials, and then we can click send. And in 9.8 seconds, you can see that it also generates very good exterior renders as well. So now, as you can see, it generated this up to scale for the front view, and it actually made it look like a mountain in Switzerland. So basically, we can even make tweaks at this. So we can say add a hot tub and kids playing outside. So then we can continue iterating on everything. So we can even add people. We can add anything just by typing your prompt. In my opinion, this is absolutely insane. So as you can see, it added a hot tub and kids playing outside. And what we can say is make it snow time, snow weather in winter time. We can click send. So let's see how this does. Basically, we can tweak and we can branch this off into multiple stuff. So you can see it already did that in our image, which is absolutely insane. We can also tell it add interior warm lighting coming from the cabin. We can click send. So it already did this here as well. And we can also just one final prompt for this image. We can say add an off-road truck. Let's see where it adds us. So basically you can see how you can iterate and you can go on and add more things and tweak things out. And also I've done this for another option right here, which is very, very cool. I've also changed the angle, which is absolutely insane. I mean, it cannot get any much faster than this. And this is why it's super important. So this is a bit random. Maybe it would have been better to add it over here. So what I can try and tell it is I can just add a rectangle here, which will be red. And then we can say, we can keep this frame selected. We can type in add an off-road truck in the red rectangle. So we can click send, and let's see if it actually adds it on the correct spot that we highlighted here. It added it. It's still way too big, but you get the idea. I mean, we can go on and tweak it and tell it to make it smaller, but you basically get the idea here. So this is how we can use AI for architecture. So Synapse is the best tool for AI in architecture right now. You can see that we can create everything manually. So we can go from idea to full design documentation. We can generate floor plans. We can do 3D visualization and also just collaborate with people on the cloud. And there are a lot of cool updates coming out. So we have AI tracing where you can just drag and drop an image or a PDF and it automatically traces it into Synapse native app. And then we can also rotate the angle of the renders just like this. So if you want to go ahead and see the new updates in the next lesson of the AI for Architects Masterclass, go ahead and watch the video right here.